the HTML5 course. So we continue from where we stopped. So I open up my browser on the right and my editor on the left. So in the last session we talked about list and tables and added some styling. Today we'll continue with forms and their control. So I will just want to maybe select this. Sorry, I want to make another page. Let's call these forms.html. So we start off on a new and then paste and then remove the contents which are not somehow relevant to. Okay, I want to leave out the HTML5 course. Then put a subheading forms. And then copy the path. So that's what we have. I might as well remove this so that everything looks nice and smooth. So let's start. Basically, forms are a way for you to add to give the users of your website or web application the ability to interact with your web page. So they have there are form elements or controls that you can use to achieve that. So we start off by first defining a form using the form tag. So the start and ending tag. So this is how we define the form tag. Now there are some options or attributes we can pass to this form. One of them is you can name this form, can add a name attribute to it. The name attribute will be used to identify this form when it is when you have more than one forms. Let's say you have some information you want to collect or some data you want to collect from the user. So the name tag, and you have more than one form on this web page, the name tag will be used to identify each form so as to know where the submission is coming from. So you can add a name tag. Let me just name it just form. Another thing you want to add is an action. In this case, you want to add the URL or the link to the scripts that will process the content of this form. Normally, when you submit a form, you can use some server-side languages like PHP, or maybe if you are using Node, you can use some server-side script in order to process the content of the form. Let's say maybe you want to send an email when the form is submitted, so you can write a script on your server as well, and then once you add the URL of the script to this action, so that once the form is submitted, the form the script specified by the URL in your action attribute will be used to process the form, so the script will run. So for this case, I'll just leave it empty because I don't have any script. And then the methods. So this is actually where you specify the HTTP method that you want to use to submit this form, and we have a number of them. You have get, post, patch, put, delete, and so on and so forth, but the most common one is get and post. So the difference between this is that when you are using a get method, the information is submitted to the as a get request. So the content of the form or the data is submitted to the URL, so you will see it appearing here. But when you use post method, the information is not shown on the address bar of your user's browser. So basically, you want to submit sensitive information, you use post, and post allows us to submit more data than that of get. But you want to submit maybe information that are not sensitive, or information that you want your script to hook onto in order to process the file, so you can use a get request. For example, you want users to submit their email and password, and before they log in, usually done using a post request. So for now, it's not really a concern, so I think the default is a get request, so you can leave it that way. So let's just leave the form elements as it is now. So the next thing is, now that I've created a form, basically as I refresh, you can see that nothing shows up, but the form is there. So we can start to build out the inputs or the form control or the form elements that the users can interact with, and there are a number of them. I'll just walk you through each of them in a demo like this. So the first one is, let's consider the inputs. Basically, we have input types, we have text areas, select, check boxes, radio buttons, and buttons, and so on and so forth. So we have inputs. So the input is one of those single tag elements. So these inputs, basically the default type is text. So when I can see, I have the inputs displayed there. So this allows the users to enter a single line of text. So the user can type their name, for example. So the user has entered a value there. So basically, it's a single line of text that the user can enter. And when they are done, that's that. So we can pass some attributes in order to modify this input. So some of them are, let's say we can specify the type of inputs, and we can say this is text, can specify it as text, and then specifying that as text is the default, so it doesn't change anything in the form. That's the default type. Then the next thing is that we can specify the name attribute. The name attribute is what the server-side scripting language will use to identify this input element. Let's say the user entered his name, and then you want to get the value that the user entered, so you will use this name attribute to point to this particular input element. So you can say the name is let's say first name. You can say first underscore name, and then the next attribute you can pass, you can choose to put a placeholder, like the text that will be displayed, in order to give the user a hint of what the input does. So you can add a placeholder. We can say enter your name, so that the user knows that is the name field. So we can say, since we are collecting first name, enter your first name. So I think our input is ready, Another thing you may want to pass is you may want this field to be a required field. That's the user must enter a value before before the form can be submitted. So we can just type in required. So that makes this field to be a required field. So the user must enter a value before the form can be submitted. So I want to close up this. Sorry. So I think everything is all set up. Oh, sorry, I'm saving the browser. So we've gotten our input element working. The next thing, you can as well create another one to enter last name and so on and so forth. Basically this takes almost the same pattern. I just want to copy it. There are different types that we can specify, so we can basically modify this to add different types. So we can, the first, this input, the type is text, so we can, HTML5 allows us to specify the type of input that we want to display based on our needs. Let's say you want to collect emails. There's an input type for emails, so you just specify input type email. You can change the name attribute to email. It's not compulsory that this name matches this. You can put anything, but is of course is much easier to identify since you are collecting email to also name this email. So so you can say enter your. So now that we understand what placeholder is, I can just say email to make it, maybe if this field is required, or maybe you may not want to make this field required, you can leave it off, and then we have email. So you can see that we have that working. Maybe you want that to go to the next line, so all you need to do is to put a break there, and then that will go to the next line. So you can see there's no space there. You can use the style attributes to add spaces to that place, so you can do that as assignment. So let me put a BR there, and then there are different types. There are a number of them, so I'll just go through them, and maybe for this there's an input type for password. So rather than, sorry, so I can change this to password, and then in the placeholder text, so we have your password. So what this does is that it allows as the user is typing, so you can see that the text that the user types is hidden, like it's not exposed. So that is a preferred way of collecting password. I want to like expand this for now to have more room for typing, and I also want to shorten these so that So let's add a BR there. Copy it to the BR, then put it there. So I want our placeholder to be shorter. So there are a number of this thing that we can specify. Let's say you want to collect numbers. There's an input type called numbers. You can add a name attribute there to be number. You can say enter let's say, what do we enter quantity. So this number, I want to remove this required. So these attributes don't have any specific order. So for this number, basically this is how it looks like. So you have where the user can enter a number, can scroll up, scroll down. You can control the movement by passing some. You can say the minimum number I want to be shown is, let's say I need 2 to be the minimum number, and then the maximum number is 20. And then when you refresh, you see that you have the minimum number, it can't go below that. And then when you scroll up, when you go up, it can't go above 20. You can also add steps, like a measure of increment. You can say I want it like the step to be 4. Maybe I want to change this to 0. Step increments of 4, so it jumps for each one time you go up is 4, 8, like that, up to 20. So that's how you can accept number input. Another thing you may want to another type of input you may want to consider is the hidden. So any elements you don't want to be displayed. So I'm having, for example, two number text here. So I can decide to hide this. This is used to hide the input type. Hidden is used to hide elements. So the element is hidden, the user can't see it. So that's how you can hide elements. So these are the various input type we can have. So another thing is that some of these inputs, let's say you may want to specify a default value. Let's say for this email, okay, let's say for this name, how do we put it? Let's say for this name we have we may want to specify a default value there and set the value to be maybe 4. So that's the value that will be shown on this. So that's a default value. So when nothing is entered and the form is submitted, this is the value that will be sent, and the user can also take it out and specify their own value. So that's how we can add value to it. So we have other forms of input. So now that we've gotten the basic, I think we can now move faster. We have an input, we have input of type tel for specifying telephone numbers. So this may not really apply to this, and then we can say phone. You can say enter phone number. So you can choose to make it required. So that's you enter your phone number. So you can enter your phone number there, and that will be it. So we have other ones. There's one for color. Let's say you want to collect colors, so you just enter the input type of color. You can say colors. Okay, you can choose to name this favorite color, fave colors. You can say enter fave colors, and then when it is displayed, you have, when the user clicks on it, the user can select a color, any color of their choice. Just pick around any one of their choice, and they say okay, you can get the value of that color. So we have, there's also one for dates. So this allows users to enter dates. Maybe you can say birthday, and call this birthday. I think this is shorter. So once the user clicks on it, you can select, can move around to select the month, can move like that, and then select, and the value will be taken up. So next is that okay, this can also be, you can also specify, there's also an input type for week. So this will allow you to specify the week. So which week you can select, which week you can select the, you can specify the week and then the year. So for example, today, I think today is 27th. So, and this is July 27th. So this is like the 30th week. So next, you can also select the month. You can select the month, and then you can, this December, and then the year 2019, June 2019, like that. So I think there's also date, time, local. I think there's date, time, local. So specify the local date and time. So you can see the format, month, day, year. You can also see, for example, you can specify the time, specify 11 o'clock, and then AM or PM, AM or PM. So that's the local date and time. So we have a number of them, so many of them we've considered. There's also one for putting in range, your URL. So let's just quickly consider that. You can also have an input type set to URL, enter, let's call it websites. So you can actually specify, you can say link, you can specify a pattern attribute of how you want this to be, and this is basically, you can pass a regular expression for the pattern. Actually, regular expression is something that is not what we'll consider in HTML5, but it can look like this: HTTPS. Let's say you want the site to have HTTPS, so you can put asterisks. So that means the websites that you enter will have a pattern like this. So it must start with HTTPS. So we can still constrain it further, but I think this is fine. so the user can enter their URL. So there's also another one for entering range data. So we can set it to range, and then I think this pattern is no more relevant to this case, and then we can call it rates or rating. Can say rate us, and then we can specify, okay, let's display it first to see how it looks like. So basically that's the range. You can specify a minimum value just like we did for the number inputs. We can say the minimum is 1, and then we can say the maximum is 10. We can add a step to it. The step can be, let's say, 2. So 2 steps. So for each time you move, you are moving 2 steps. So you can see there are a total of 5 steps there. So these are some bunch of input methods available to us. So basically, let's jump and move on to, I want to put a horizontal row here. So we can also have other input type like buttons and text area. So let's just basically consider that. So we can have the first I want to consider is the select. Okay, maybe let's consider input when the type is check. Can add checkbox. That's the type of the input, and then okay, let's display a checkbox first. So that's a checkbox. So by default this box is not checked. We can also add a name attribute to it in order to have a reference. We can say above 30. So by default this checkbox is not checked, but you can add a checked attribute so that once it's displayed is automatically checked. This is something you want to do with JavaScript, not manually like this. Sorry, I want a BR. So you can have more than one checkbox corresponding to each option. You can say above 45. Honestly, these names may not make sense, but in real application you have to go through the names. You don't want people to check more than one. Okay, you can, maybe they can check more than once. So you can see they will all be displayed there, but only the one that has that checked attributes will be checked. If you take it away, none of them will be checked, so they can select all of them, and then you get the value that you are looking for. So we also have another one. Maybe I will be using horizontal to separate it. We also have another one, input type of radio, for radio buttons. And the way this works is, if we have let's call this gender. This doesn't count again, so let's call this gender. So you can see that's a radio button. So if we have two radio buttons that have the same name, so you see that if we have 2 radio buttons that have the same name, when I'm selecting this one, the other one will be off. When this is on, the other one will basically off. But assuming they don't have the same name, let me just add something to it. You can see that feature is not there. You can select the 2 of them. So where you want people to only make one to pick one out of a number of radio buttons, you have to give all of them the same name, and only one of them will be selected at a time. Let's say you want to specify somebody can either be male or female, nothing else or nothing more. So let me refresh. So that's how you can put that. So for input type, we also have input type of button, where you can specify the button. You can put the name as send, and then normally when this button displays, so you can see there's no value on it, you can specify the value that will be there. You can say send now. So that's the value that will be on the button. You can also use the button button tag. You have button tag, and then in between this start and ending tag, you can say send now, and then that will also be displayed there. So in this button tab, you can specify the type of button. This can be you want a submit button. When the user clicks it, the form will be submitted. For example, the last send now. So when I click it, you see the form will be submitted. The form has been submitted. You can investigate that in the URL here. So you can see that the form has been submitted. But because I specified this field to be required, so that's why it will not submit. You can see this is like what you can use as your form validator to validate, to ensure that the user does not submit an empty form. So you can see it's flagging an error or a warning there to fill out that field. So that's submit. You also have reset. This is used when the user clicks on it, the values they have submitted will be reset to their original values. So that's how we can specify buttons. The next we can specify, we also have select. So we have select. This basically allows users to select out of a number of options. So we can say options, we have let's say HTML5. That's the first option, and then the second option you can have CSS3. In the other option we can have JavaScript, and then these are the options that we have. We can copy this, and then we have a Python, you can have Java, you can have and so on and so forth. So we can put all this together. So when we show up that, so we have our select button, but this is down the page, so the user can click on it and then select one out of a number of them. I think what I will do is I'll need to comment some of this so that we can have more fields. So just add a comment there, save and refresh, so that the place we are working on can be up, so that we can see what we are doing. So you can select any number of them. Also with HTML5 comes this we have this opt group, where you can use it to group group a number of what they call it, options. So you can specify opt group like that, and then add your options there. Now this opt group will have a label attribute. We can label them web. We can label these let's say the label for this one can be another anything. So when we hit refresh, so you can see that it has given context to the different options. So these are options you can find in web, these are options you can find in another based on the label that you have specified. So that's it for select. You can also pass value attributes. So you can set the value for this is HTML. This is also what you normally want to do, so that you can pick up the value of whatever the user has selected when the form is submitted from using a server-side script. So you can also do that with JavaScript as well. So the next one is we can look at text areas. The thing about text areas is it allows you to submit multi-line text. So the way you do that is, if you've been to the contact us page of most websites, you will see a box there that allows you to type in your message. So you have text area. So that's how we define it. So we have a text area. So this we can type as many lines as we so desire. So we can configure this text area. We can specify, let's say, the number of columns using the cost attribute. Let's say the number of columns is let's say 10, and then the number of rows to be 15. You can add a placeholder as others to say message. So that's what will be displayed there. So you can see it looks as if the column is a bit. I can make this up to 35 so that I have something that's that. So you can see the placeholder is up there, and that's basically how we use if you like, you can pass a value attribute. So just some things you can do. If you notice, you can see that this text box is resizable. The way you can play around this, can pass a style attribute. Remember we talked about style. Pass a style attribute and say resize, and then set it to none. So set the resize attributes to none. You can see what's happening. Sorry, that's a double colon. So you can set the resize attribute to none, and that goes away. So that's it. I think we've considered quite a number of them. If there's anyone I missed out, just note it, send me, just touch it up on the platform or in the comment section, and I'll do my best to clarify it. Okay, there's also another one. Let's say you want to take in that's actually an input of type. say you want users to be able to upload a file, so you just set it to file, and then when you set this to file, there are a number of options. This will basically allow when the user okay, let's try it out. Users will be prompted to, I think I need to uncomment some things too, so that I'll try and make these files as accessible, so that though in case you need it, you can always get it. I think we need to comment this text area. Maybe I can put the files on GitHub so that you can access it. So you can see that these so I have this file upload button, so I can click on it and it will open my folder on my system. So that's that. You can choose any file. Let's say I decide to choose this one. You can see the file is uploaded there. So another configuration you can pass is you can pass, give it the ability to accept multiple files. You can also set the type of files that it can accept to, let's say you want to accept only JPG. You also want to be able to accept maybe .png, what else? Sorry, this is .png, not that. So what else? Maybe also needs JPEG, and so on and so forth. So that will accordingly be shown. So these are some of the form controls that you can pass to your form. I think that's it for this form section. So if you have any questions or anyone I missed out, just let me know in the comments and I'll do my best to respond. And if you like this video, which I hope you do, just give it a thumbs up. You can also consider subscribing so that you get notified when new contents are being uploaded. Thanks so much.